Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the internet. We are the shouty radio people. We are the ones that stir up muck and talk about the news. We regurgitate it into your sweet, sweet ear hole, if you will.
That's right. It's all muck. They make it, we rake it, and you will take it.
My God, I hate us. I'm Peter,
And I'm Pat.
and we're those muckrakers. So we were just talking about how I know that we're officially old, because I'm on spring break, and the first thing I do is come home and go to sleep for like 4 hours.
Yar. And I'm cold, and I don't want to go outside because I don't like the fabric in the jackets.
That sounds like something my Why don't you put on a jacket, Grandpa? I don't like the.
Kids are skateboarding on the sidewalks.
I don't like the fabric. Why don't you get another jacket? Because they don't sell those kind of jackets at the Woolworths. Like, we're just easily discouraged by the slightest inconvenience. We'll just not do something.
Yeah. The next sign of our senility will be just like binging Fox News and being all like,
Obama's up to what now? Peter, you're not going to believe what he's doing to our Trump.
Do you think it's going to be like the old people that used to scream about, like, FDR, like, 40 years after he died?
hey, with us and Trump? Yeah.
I was going to say with us
My
and...
God.
Well, yeah, with us. Well, the thing about, like, FDR, he was on the dime, right?
Was he?
I think so.
I'll say yes.
I think it's the dime. There are, like, people that, like, if you try to hand them change, like, real old people that are like, no, sir, I won't accept a dime since that bastard FDR's face is on it. Like, that's crazy. Like, you're holding a grudge against a Depression-era president.
Give me 2 pieces for a nickel, he'd say.
Yeah. So we're old, man. I fell asleep reading a fascinating article on how drugs and drug epidemics are ravaging the Amish community.
Ooh, really?
Yeah, because apparently they're so bored that, like, they're like, Hezekiah, this heroin thing is awesome. Like, because their population of kids are especially vulnerable to like drug addiction and stuff like that.
Jebediah, I need for you to feed the chicken while Jacob plows.
Yeah.
I'll be over here snorting cocaine.
Yeah, they love cocaine. They like, and honestly, I can see the Amish and cocaine working out very well. Can you imagine how many barns you'd raise if you're just coked out of your mind?
We'd be raising barns like it's 1999.
Yeah, you'd just be throwing them up. There was one kid that was arrested. I think it was just for, like, they were doing some kind of, I don't remember if it was heroin or meth or what it was, but they got arrested because they were buggy surfing.
Oh, cool.
So, like
like Jackass used to do.
Yeah, but like the buggies are going down the road. They're like, "You feel that wind in your hair, Hezekiah?" Like,
feel that wind in your face, Silent Bob.
And it's
oh, those were the days.
I feel real bad because, my God, man, like, they're so bored and they're teenagers. Like, this is their natural inclination as teenagers to just do the most dangerous thing.
Now that I'm old, I realize that the main difference between teenagers and adults is that adults just don't have the energy to do the dumb shit that teens do anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that we're more responsible or smarter. We can't be fucked. We're so tired. We just want, like, a good couch and the TV to not be turned up too loud.
Yeah, it's like we don't get into all the shenanigans because we don't like the fabric in our jackets, but we don't have the energy to go down to the Woolworths and buy a new jacket. It's and I used to think it was moving to New York for me that did it, and I'm like, no, it's not the city, man, it's me. I'm just like,
you turned a corner.
Yeah, I just turned a corner. It's a nice comfy corner. I just turned it, and I'm just like, maybe we'll just find a park with a nice bench to sit on.
And we can feed the birds.
Yeah, that's my biggest complaint right now is park benches. Not really comfortable.
They're actually designed that way on purpose to discourage homeless people from sleeping on them.
There's actually a term for that called I can't remember the word. It's some kind of architecture. But
Bumitis.
A Midas?
Bum-itis.
Oh, no, not bum-itis, but yeah, there's a specific...
I just wanted to make up a word.
And you see it a lot in New York. They'll put little spiky things on places on streets where they don't want people to sit or sleep, and I'm like, man, you guys are fucked.
Yep, it's like that's a big thing down here in this town is nobody wants anyone to be anywhere, and that's why they're so strict on parking. Like you can't park anywhere in this town without getting a ticket within like 5 minutes. So you can only go to like a very limited number of places, like fast food joints and park, and then just like walk 5 miles to wherever you're going.
That annoys the bejesus out of me. There was a great news story that came out of, I believe, Orange County, California, one of the most affluent counties in the United States. And the problem was like they have a homeless issue, and like they just like their shelters are overflowing, and like so the way they deal with it is they do like everywhere else. They argue about where we should put up another homeless shelter, and everybody goes, "I don't want another homeless shelter because I don't want homeless people near me." And so people are
Homeless shelters don't attract homeless people. It just gives them somewhere to go. Then there'll be fewer homeless people near you because they'll have the shelter to go to.
Well, these people are
We don't. Do they think that is this like the whole welfare thing? It's like, well, if you do that for people, then they'll encourage them to be lazy.
Yeah.
Well, why should I have a home if I could be homeless at the fancy homeless shelter? I bet they even have refrigerators for their food.
And I think you're 100% correct on that. I think that's the entire point is like they think some guy's gonna be like, well, I sold my home, converted all my money into drugs, and I'm gonna move into the homeless shelter. That's yeah.
Sold all my kids for drugs, and now I'm gonna go sleep in the crack house.
Yeah, I think that's what they think. And it's so weird to see like people that are protesting the opening of a homeless shelter. It's fucking crazy. They did that here in New York. I used to work putting ads up on the subway trains, and there was a area. It was a nice little like suburban area at the end of one train line, and I was reading the paper about that little neighborhood. And there's a picture of like they're trying to open a homeless shelter out there, and all these people are like, it's a danger to the children. So people are protesting a new homeless shelter, and standing in front of the homeless shelter are these bewildered like homeless people and families and like homeless children, like wondering why people are so angry at them for being homeless.
God.
Yeah, it's insane. But I'm listening to this and I'm just whispering. I'm like, hey, I have a solution. Maybe if you would just give them homes. Just build a bunch of like homes and go, here you go. And then let them live in it forever.
I mean, I've said this in other podcasts, but I'm totally for like everyone having the right to food and shelter. Just like it doesn't have to be great food, it doesn't have to be great shelter, but it should exist and everyone should have the right to life. And if all these people out there that have been convinced to vote against their best interests are like, oh, people shouldn't have that because then, then, like the people that make those types of arguments tend to be people that say the Constitution. Well, the Constitution says you have the right to life right there at the start of it. So yeah.
Well,
it is in the Constitution.
I call it. There's an old Abe Lincoln trick where he goes, "If I make my enemy my friend, do I not destroy my enemy?" And I say, if we give the homeless, sweet little tiny houses, do we not destroy the homeless?
Yeah. So they're not homeless anymore.
Yeah, it's just weird. Well, I mean, like nobody in New York in the world, especially in the United States, is as hated as like the idea of like the homeless tramp traveling town to town, diddling your kids and selling them drugs.
Speaking of diddling our kids, I want to take a step back to the that was Abe Lincoln you were just quoting, right?
Yeah.
If you make your enemy your friend, then he's no longer your enemy.
Yeah.
Why don't we come together as a nation, agree that Trump is disgusting, but why don't we all just try and be his friend, and then maybe we can get him to do what we want him to do, and he'll start signing bills we want him to sign. He would be the one guy that would be crazy enough.
Yeah, and that's
to actually sign. Everyone has a right to Homes Act. Everyone has a right to Food Act. Because we saw with Roseanne in her rebooted show, that he will take time out of his day. He will cancel all of his meetings just to call up one person who is nice to him and spend some time with her.
And I said this, I think, I don't remember if it was...
If the listeners didn't know, Roseanne had her old show rebooted to the present day, and she plays a pro-Trump person on her show, and the actual real-life president called her up to say, thank you for being nice to me. Your ratings are tremendous.
That's a problem. Is I've always said his biggest thing is he wants to be liked and loved. And remember, we talked about a little bit on the podcast. What if Trump had run as a Democrat? Would he still be
Would
as
we personally still hate him as much?
Right.
And I was saying I think so because I would still have figured out that he's really dumb. But as long as this has to be here, as long as this cancer has to continue to afflict us, why not just try to be really nice to him and see if he can actually do some good for us for a change?
I think the problem
It's like, think about it this way. You have a giant head tumor sticking out, and it's going to kill you. But in the meantime, why not use it as a fancy coat rack for that jacket you don't care about that much?
I think the problem is even the ideas that
use it for something helpful for now.
the ideas that he says that he's for. If you notice, if you pay close attention, and I'm talking to you also, deplorables, if you listen, if you pay very close attention to Trump, he doesn't actually do anything. He talks a lot. He's great at trash. He's great at trash talk. He talks a huge game, right? But what happens in the end is he ultimately backs off so that he can't be accused of doing anything, right? So he'll do, he was talking about the gun stuff, right? Then he's like, let's leave it up to the states. He was going to dismantle health care for Trump care, right? Didn't really do that. He was going to build the wall. Now he's trying to find someone else to take over the wall. So he doesn't really do anything.
He's trying to say that it's going to be a Department of Defense thing because at the Omnibus spending bill, which he also said that he was going to veto it.
Yeah.
But the problem is that it passed the House 246 to 167 and the Senate 65 to 32. So even if he vetoed it, the combination of Paul Ryan, Pelosi, Schumer, and McConnell combining forces, they could easily override his veto. They could twist 2 or 3 arms and they would have such an overwhelming majority that there's nothing the president can do. Because the fact of the matter is the budget is where the U.S. president's power is at its absolute weakest of all the things he has influence over.
He runs the government kind of like the way The Apprentice runs, in that
he just keeps firing people.
Well, hold on. It's even better than that. So remember, in The Apprentice, we talked about this before, he doesn't actually have any power. It's the producers of the show, right?
Yeah.
He's an actor on the show. So he's basically transferred that to the presidency. He lets everybody else kind of run and fight during the government, and all he does is fire people in his cabinet, and that's all he's done.
Yep. Is the people that are actually intelligent that are running the show. Speaking of people that are actually intelligent, the military officials that were close knit around him are really the ones running the show for a while. But since he started firing them, I'm getting edgy here. Who's actually going to run the government when they're all gone?
Well, I mean, I think people are going to start to panic. It's funny. I've been I've been teaching the Great Depression.
It's all chaos. Moving on.
Well, hold on. This ties into this. I've been teaching the Great Depression and the stock market crash and all that stuff. And what was really interesting was the stock market got real volatile, a lot of ups and downs before it finally crashed. And what that did is that erodes people's faith, right? So where the president comes into play in this, and that there's nobody at the wheel, is that when it happened, President Herbert Hoover was so against any social welfare and anything that he did nothing. He was very laissez-faire about the economy will fix itself. It's up to the hands off. Government shouldn't get involved. So he did nothing as things just got worse and worse. So the parallels between Hoover being very laissez-faire and this sort of new brand of far-right conservatism about how we don't want the government to regulate anything, unless it's women's bodies, is very, very similar to what's going on with the stock market and stuff right now. So so basically the idea of having a volatile stock market, and because all it has to do is lose consumer confidence. That's all it takes is enough people to want to try to sell their stocks at the same time. Now, luckily, we've got the FDIC and all this to make sure that the banks can't tell you that you've lost your money. But here's the thing about the FDIC, right? About they guarantee your money in the bank to up to $100,000.
Yeah, it's only up to 100,000 for one thing.
Well, if it's bad enough, do you think the government can really guarantee everybody's money in the bank if we start seeing massive bank die-offs?
No, that's what happened at 2008. Or 2007, actually.
Yeah.
Whenever everything just started crashing and falling apart. they couldn't actually insure everything because the things that insured everything all filed for bankruptcy at the same
Yeah.
time. It wasn't just the banks failing, it was that all the insurance agencies that backed up that insured the banks and said, don't worry, these aren't going to fail unless the entire market fails. If it all failed at once, then yeah, of course they can't insure anything. They can't give you anything back because nothing exists anywhere. It all forfeited at once.
Yeah, so we're all tied, like all the institutions are tied together, and if the biggest weights go down hard enough, like even the government, like, we got lucky that we were able to like bail out the banks. And I feel bad because I was young and stupid enough that I was like, don't bail them out, let them fail, laissez-faire. But now I'm older and I go,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. Bail them the hell out, because what happens, and it took me a lot of studying to finally understand why the stock market crash destroyed the American economy. It's because friggin' banks are taking your money and gambling it on the stock market.
Kind of. I mean, with that one in particular, they were bundling toxic assets and then reselling them to other banks.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But like it's the best way, like, because I'm banging my head against the wall trying to teach students like how stocks and buying on margin works. But the best way to
Yeah.
explain the stock market is we're all gambling in hopes that this stocks go up. But as soon as like we lose faith in the stock market, we're screwed.
It's because, money itself is fictional at this point. So, of course, the thing where you gamble all the money at is also fictional, and it's largely based on consumer confidence. Now, there is certain fundamentals that are quote unquote real, but we're rarely trading on where the stock market actually is, and very few people can even do the math required to figure out where that is. Most people are just kind of spitballing. Like the vast majority of people that are trading are just spitballing, and they'll very quickly move with the crowd. If they see the rest of the crowd like jolt down, or if one, imagine a flock of birds. If one just takes off, they're all going to take off.
Yeah.
Even if there's no danger around.
I was about to get
Now,
real.
whether or not there's danger around is the fundamentals of the economy, but the birds are flying regardless of the danger.
Yeah,
What the point I'm getting
I was about to
there.
get really mad at you because there's a phrase I hate that I feel like people say when they're just like, I don't have anything else to say what we're doing good in the government, and they always go, our fundamentals are strong. I'm like, man, that's what a losing football team says.
I was actually trying to like explain the math behind it without explaining the math behind it, because anything more specific than that, and you have to like look at individual cases.
We ought to do a short podcast called
When I say fundamentals, I'd be like, for this particular business, it's actually making a shitload of money, and it's going to continue to make a lot of money. And so the fundamentals of that business would be strong, and that bundled with all these others, they're all very likely doing well, but maybe that one's not as much. So, but anyway.
we ought to do a splinter podcast called Wilda Explains It All. And it's got the Clarissa Explains It All theme music, but it's just you explaining the math behind questions I have about stuff. And at the end, you just hear a gunshot sound of me shooting myself.
Yar.
Da 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 bang. I'm not saying you don't.
That's a different song.
I'm not saying you don't explain stuff well. I just say like
Yeah, it's math, and
It's-
people hate math.
yeah, it's because we teach it wrong. But yeah, so the whole point of all this is that like we're very easy to see the next. It's very easy to, I feel like, fall into the next Great Depression. What's interesting is like I wonder if anybody else could kick it off, a worldwide depression, and then drag us under.
Besides Trump, which by the way, he's not getting his wall. That bill, the spending bill I mentioned earlier, that everyone like passed regardless of what he wanted, it had no money for his wall. They say, oh well, it had whatever. No, it had no money for his wall.
Yeah, it would, because it would be
But-
cheaper just to shoot all the immigrants.
Yeah, and like people are trying to say, well, he has a master plan. He's going to raid the Department of Defense, and these are usually the same people that hate Obama for stripping down our military and making it weaker. So it's like, well, now you're okay with it if it's this guy doing it for reasons you find acceptable?
I just
If we even believe to begin with that Obama weakened our military, because guess what? This bill that he passed is the exact same spending bill that Obama did in almost every year of his presidency. It hasn't changed. Because right now with this Congress, this obstructionist Congress, there's only one type of spending bill that can ever get through, and it's the same one that's gone through for the past 7 years since the Tea Partiers took over. that's the only type of spending bill we're going to get.
Well,
is
that's
this one that passed.
well, this will tie in the news today. So, like, it's like I had another solution. So, the head of Veterans Affairs, what's that guy's name?
Head of Veteran Affairs. Well, he was just fired for someone else.
Yeah, God, I can't believe we're so well researched that we don't even have names. So the head of Veterans Affairs was recently sacked, and Trump nominated his doctor to be the new head of Veterans Affairs.
Yeah.
The doctor, how did you describe him? A homeless man that stole someone else's clothes and is posing as a doctor?
He looks like a homeless man that like murdered a doctor and stole his clothes, and the fact that he murdered him is the reason why they're so like in tatters and dirty.
He killed him and he buried him, and then he goes, "Wait, I need that. I need that.
Digs him back up.
I need that suit."
Takes the coat.
Yeah, and then buries him. Wait, no, I need the pants. So
then he cremates him, and he's like, "Wait, no, I need those ashes." And he just smears them on his face.
One of the things that we do here on this podcast is we provide solutions, and I have fixed the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Oh,
You know how we do it?
how's that?
We just give people friggin' health care.
Yeah, that actually would go a long way, because a lot of what we're dealing with right now is the psychological care of our troops more than anything is just being heinously neglected. That's why we have so many more homeless veterans than any other type of citizen, is because they're left like psychologically in shambles, unable to cope with this current society, because society just kind of shits all over them and leaves them like John Rambo to wander the train tracks.
If John Rambo also had, what do you call it? Well, I guess he did have psychosis. I was
He
about to say,
did.
like, yeah, psychosis.
Yeah, that was the plot of the first Rambo movie, is that he was...
I realize that fits really well. Yeah, he was just a guy that's messed up from the war. Yeah, so a huge amount of homeless people are veterans. Huge amount of homeless people have mental health issues, and a huge amount, because I was part of this. The bigger majority of homeless, and this is what's fascinating, they're called the working poor, in that they have full-time jobs. They just can't make enough to like get into a house.
There's the most horrifying thing I've ever like really looked into is the working poor that work like 2+ jobs, like two full-time jobs and a part-time job, and all they do whenever they get home is just try to manage their kids, because maybe there's someone whose situation in life used to be better, so they had 2 or 3 or 4 kids even, and then their situation got really, really bad. The husband took ill and died, and now the wife has all the medical bills, all the kids, has to sell the house, move into a low-income neighborhood or apartment complex, and is just barely scraping by, and she has no one to turn to, and she just has to work 24/7 to just barely provide anything for the kids.
Yeah, but
And that's the life that a lot of people live.
and people are, and I've heard the excuses all over the like, we should have thought about that before you had kids, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry.
You don't plan for the worst possible situation.
I'm sorry,
only-
time traveler. What?
Yeah.
They've done tons of studies that prove that like the minimum wage and like the minimum base income of jobs do not provide enough for people to like
Not even close.
to live. There was a really cool multi-part podcast by I think Frontline.
And you know who is front line and center fighting that, Peter?
Who?
The same guy who rides the public bus.
I don't know. I mean, maybe we've discussed our feelings
I know.
on Bernie, and if he's just a con man.
But yeah, the $15 minimum wage would be a good start. Now I know a lot of people are saying
It would have
well,
been
a lot of these.
It would have been a good start like 20 years ago.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying, well, this is for shitty jobs where you just flip burgers and no skill jobs, and if it goes up to $15, those people just lose their jobs. Well, that's also why we've been talking about basic cost of living. Let's just go ahead and give people what they need to have food and shelter.
Yeah, we have enough money that we could generate taxes by slapping a cost of living tax on corporations or you know what I mean, on different things. Like there's ways to do it. Like we're stuck in this. So the Frontline podcast was amazing. It was just like 5-part podcast on poverty, And their findings were that we still, in the American psyche, have this belief, this moralistic belief, that poverty is linked to some kind of moral ineptitude or some kind of lack of moral fiber. That if you are
the fair world fallacy.
if you are moral and are upright and you work hard and you are not lazy, there's no way that you will end up like I did, living in the back of a truck.
Yeah. It just reminds me of all the times in which people are all like,
I face reality. It's common sense.
this, that, and the other. They're usually the ones that don't face reality. They're usually the ones that see life as a TV show.
They found out that the thing about
that goes back again to the good guy with the gun, right? The hero always wins.
Yeah.
That's just how they perceive the world, and that's incorrect. Like someone doesn't become rich because they're good always. There's plenty of people out there that are really good and really poor and will stay that way. But these people that believe in a fair and just world believe that if someone works really, really hard, they'll always be rewarded for it, whereas only the selfish, the lazy, the people that don't want to work will become impoverished. But that's just not true. That's just not reality.
And they found out that like the biggest indicator of wealth or poverty, a lot of times to move out of poverty, like, is just luck. It's up to chance. They did the old Morgan.
The same way the stock market's just all RNG, random number generators. It's all gambling. Moving up and out of your current situation in life would be all random. Like if let's say this podcast, for instance, took off majorly, you wouldn't have to live in your truck anymore.
I mean, I don't live in my truck now, but I had quit a pretty, I wouldn't say lucrative, but I had quit a job working for the fire department to work at a hotel because I was finishing out college and I didn't really want to be a firefighter anymore, and I needed more time than my job would give me to like finish my degree. And so I just crunched the numbers, and there was no way I was going to be able to afford an apartment. So like I kind of lived in my truck for a few weeks. And I'll tell you, here's one of the hardest things. And I was working homeless, and I had a truck, right? The hardest thing was finding a friggin' place to sleep.
Oh yeah, because of the parking rules.
Yeah,
right?
you mean like it's a real hard to just like.
That's what I was just talking about with in this town, and I'd imagine where you were, it was just as bad too.
I parked somewhere to sleep once, and I'm just in my truck, just like, all right, just kind of going to sleep. Cop pulls up, and he's like, "Sir, you can't sleep in this empty parking lot." And I just looked at him, and I was just pissed, and I go, "All right, cool, man. I'm so tired. It would just be a shame if I got back out on the road and fell asleep and crashed into a fiery crash and maybe accidentally hit a family, and then I survive." And they go, "What happened?" And I go, "Well, I tried to sleep, but this officer," "What's your name, officer?" This officer, Officer Johnson, told me I had to move on even though I was tired." And this dude, like, I had him trapped, so he couldn't let me stay there, but he just goes, "If you go down on the beach, they don't really patrol there, so you may want to think about that. Goodbye." And that's when I found out that I sleep with my mouth wide open, and I woke up with a mouthful of beach sand. So it's tough being homeless.
They made you like go out onto the beach,
Yeah,
out of your truck.
yeah.
I'd have just driven out onto the beach. They don't patrol there, I hear.
Just driving down the dock, driving down the beach. He said they don't patrol here. I'm not get out of my car.
Like, yo, your fishing poles are no match for my 4x4. I don't know.
But yeah, it's tough. It's
4-wheel drive. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, it's really difficult being poor. And I was very lucky when I was young because like my dad died. We lost our primary breadwinner when we were kids, and luckily him and mom had like gotten insurance out the wazoo. So when he died, insurance like basically paid off everything and his retirement, because he got lucky and he was at work in with the Department of Transportation. So his retirement and the insurance payoffs were basically enough to provide that primary breadwinner income. And luckily my mom was also employed as a nurse, so we didn't end up like moving to like West Virginia and living in a tar paper shack for the rest of our lives. We were able to keep that leg up, so we were able to stay like lower middle class. But if that had not happened, I wouldn't have gone to college. Probably wouldn't be doing this podcast right now.
There is something almost romantic about the idea of like living out of your truck doing a podcast.
It is until you can't sleep because the cops are like, you got to go on the beach.
Well, that's why I say it's a romance, right? It's
Yeah.
not real. It's just kind of idealized.
The reality is, the first time I was in my truck, and I'm just real sad because, like, there was a lot of stuff. My girlfriend broke up with me. Like, I kind of, like, moved into her apartment because I helped her get an apartment, and then she was just like, I thought you were going to, like, maybe live more in your truck instead of in this apartment with me. And I was like, I think we're going to break up because that's a terrible thing to tell your boyfriend is, why don't you go sleep in the truck? So my first night in my truck, I'm sad, and like the radio show that I'm listening to was about serial killers and how they're just haunting America's highways and just murdering people at will. And I'm like, I'm in a dark truck on a highway. I'm a homeless person now. People
That
hunt.
means you can be the serial killer.
Oh, I was gonna say people hunt me for fun.
I was going to say you could become the hunter instead of the huntee.
The hunter, prowling America's roads, hunting serial killers. That would be a great show. The homeless, the base of the homeless vigilante.
They sort of had that with Hobo with a Shotgun.
Yeah, I watched part of that and got bored when they pulled that dude's head off, and I was like, eh.
I don't remember it that well, but I remember watching the movie Rubber, and I actually liked that one.
Is that the one about the tire the tire that kills people?
Yeah, they came out around the same time.
Yeah, this is why our friendship is hanging by a fragile thread, because you like the movie Rubber.
It was amazing.
I watched like 2 minutes of that. I'm like, Jesus, it's about a tire. Like, I don't. This is what we're up to now. This is why our society is failing.
Are you telling me that you found the plot to be too tiring?
Yes, I found. Jesus, this is like your Ted Cruz impression all over again. When you're like, I'm gonna make a bunch of CSI puns, and it's gonna be great.
Yeah, I actually have even more, but I'll stop it there. I'll cruise away from this one. And speaking of being out, McMaster's is out. John Bolton's in.
See, here's what I was confused about. I thought McMaster's was fired like a week or two ago, and now they're just saying he just. What the hell happened with that?
He actually was out Thursday, so right before we did our podcast last Friday, he was gone.
Yeah.
He's the if anyone doesn't know, McMaster's is was the National Security advisor, but now we have John Bolton, who's a crazy neocon. He's like this cartoonish guy with a giant mustache, and he just wants to nuke Iran for some reason, and he is the biggest war hawk imaginable.
Well, Bolton's
he is going to push for us to go into every possible war.
Bolton's the one that still believes in the WMDs in Iraq. Bolton also, at one point, apparently was like, we should use that WMD thing to invade Cuba. And everyone was like, we kind of did that thing in the 60s, and it didn't work well.
But John Bolton's the guy. Now, here's the funny thing. Fox News always loves introducing him as former ambassador to the UN, John Bolton. But he only got that ambassadorship because he was a George W. Bush appointment or he was a recess appointment, right? So the Senate never had to confirm him because they would never confirm this guy because he's like legitimately mentally ill. He should be homeless like all the veterans he's going to create his wars.
I was going to say he should be a homeless veteran.
Not out there making more homeless veterans.
You notice that
in a position of power. He has no place in any position of power. But then again, this is entirely keeping in line with the Trump administration from the earliest days of his campaign. This whole thing has just been one last hurrah of a bunch of miserable failures. Every fringe nut job, washed up asshole, has been ostracized politician. They've allied with this orange monster, and while anyone even remotely reasonable and respectable kept their distance from him, creating this coalescence of swamp, really.
Well, that's because like anybody that like wants to have a political career after this is steering clear. The only people that like he's getting are the people that got nothing to lose.
Yeah, the Trump campaign and his administration now is the house of people that will never have anywhere else to go. Holding hands with people that'll never get hired by any respectable organization again.
One of the great stories to come out of all of this is Trump cannot find a lawyer. All of his lawyers have quit, and he cannot find anybody to represent him. Now
he keeps asking, and they keep turning him down. And he actually got an amazing legal defendant recently, who's been actually for real sending him very good, solid legal advice. Do you know who it is?
Is it going to be that website, that like lawyer.com website where they're like, get legal advice over the internet?
That'd be amazing. But nah, his name is Mueller. You might have heard of him.
Wait, he's getting legal advice from Mueller?
Yeah, Mueller felt bad for him, and so he's actually started to give the president legal advice, saying maybe you should not do such and such and such, because that's going to really incriminate yourself.
God damn it, Mueller. This world doesn't deserve you. But come on, man. Fight to win. This is why you lost in Vietnam. You got too big a heart, Mueller.
It's
I'm hoping that all his advice is like, you should take all the Russia documents and send them to me, and I'll keep them safe for you. Because
it's cute watching Mueller try to help him, just because he's worried that the president's just gonna be really bad for himself.
Well, I mean, the big thing is a bad president is bad for all of us. That's kind of my argument with these people that are still doing that whole like, na 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 na, my team won, you lost, you snowflake. My whole thing is like, look, man, I want the country to do well. I don't care who wins. If Trump had been like the new orange FDR and he's just like ramming through like healthcare and turning us into a utopia, I'd be like, you know what? I didn't like the man and I still don't like him personally, but he's doing good things for people. I'd be fine with that. Because I'm not about us and them. I'm about, guys, we all have to live here, right? Like, you do.
Yeah,
Like they like the people that are pushing for war. You do realize if a nuclear war starts that we are all screwed.
Yeah. But like, speaking of we all have to live here afterwards, God, I hope we can get through this. I just want you to remember that, and by you I mean all the listeners more than anyone, that the State Department at the end of Obama's term was widely regarded by scholars, by foreign diplomats, and by historians as one of the most professional and capable in our country's history. And that's saying a lot. Independent of, yours or mine, your or my feelings about Obama, and keep in mind, not everyone on this podcast is a fan of his, the State Department itself, going back to really Condoleezza Rice's time as the Secretary of State, for that matter, has turned itself into a global diplomatic super predator. And do you want evidence of this success?
Yeah.
It's got Europe to hang tight with us in heavily sanctioning Russia for years after the Ukraine and Crimea incident, whenever they annexed Crimea from Ukraine. And that's no small accomplishment. Getting Europe to say no to Russian oil, gas, and money.
Yeah.
Lots of people never thought that it was going to happen.
Russia,
and our State Department engaged in super heroics to quietly make it so.
If you don't understand why it's hard for Europe to say no to Russia, basically Russia controls a lot of the natural gas and oil going into these European countries, and if Russia cuts the switch off, it won't just mean like, oh man, the gas is off, like I can't use my stove. They will die. Like in the winter, a lot of people depend on this oil and gas to heat their homes. So Russia could, in effect, by turning off gas and stuff like that, they could basically cause like a Holocaust. They could cause like thousands to millions of people to die. It would be anarchy. It would like destroy like these European countries. Yeah. So it's a big thing to get them to go against Russian wishes.
And just to cite my source, some of these ideas came from Scro from MMO Champion. That's an amazing poster if you ever look him up. All right, so we're a year and change in, and where is our State Department now after just 1.5 years? 65% of our senior official ambassadors have quit. They're having a hiring crisis. An enormous number of positions remain empty. Entire offices are shuttered. There's a real feeling that it'll take a decade after Trump to rebuild what they just had. And Trump and Tillerson obliterated for no reason.
Oh, no. There's a reason, and I will tell you why this reason. You want me to tell you why they were willing to scorch the earth and ruin a perfectly good thing that someone handed them?
Because they're not a... Oh, you hate it whenever I say that quote.
Yeah.
Why is that?
It has nothing to do with best and brightest. The idea that, and I think this is, and I don't know how you'd fix this, but the problem was that during Obama's 2 terms, He had no scandals. He was, as the term goes, as clean as a preacher's bed sheets, right? No
Yeah.
skeletons in his closet.
Yep.
No real like snafus to speak of. He was an ideal president. You know what his two greatest sins were?
Uh,
His first sin was thinking that I feel like that like the products would sell themselves, right? So the idea that you
yeah.
should not have to sell people on healthcare and sell people on these initiatives, I think was a mistake.
Yeah, because there's a false sentiment going around that like you can just do whatever and let the people decide. That's something Fox News says a lot because they're clearly just trying to brainwash their viewers into believing whatever, and they're trying to convince them to believe stuff by saying it without saying it, so that if the person
Yeah.
vocalizes the answer in their own head, it's more believable than if they were just told. But it's a bullshit manipulation tactic.
But I think
But Obama was trying to do a more legitimate version of that by just letting the marketplace of ideas float the better ideas to the surface when that doesn't really work when there's an overwhelming amount of propaganda trying to
yeah.
fuck over people in favor of
So
businesses.
that's number one. I don't think I don't think I don't think he put as much emphasis on selling the American people on these things that were good for them as he should have. One of the differences between him and FDR, because I do think that he's going to be looked at as like the second coming of FDR, right?
I
FDR,
could see that, yeah.
yeah, FDR was amazing at selling people his ideas. Because he took a lot of liberties with things that were like the whole social welfare system did not exist. FDR made that, but he sold people on it, and he still had people that were like, "This guy and his welfare." I'm like, it was a dust bowl. Did you want to eat dirt and die? He saved you. So he didn't have that set. Like the big thing with FDR was like his fireside chats, which made people feel better, right? Like he basically sat them down in their living rooms all across the country and got on the radio and was like, you know what this country needs is some welfare. People just need a little hand up. You know what I'm saying there? Hey, little Jimmy. Like, so he,
I love that has been replaced with Trump's like all cap tweets of "do something."
yeah, I'd love to start calling those his fireside tweets.
What's on it?
Yeah, yeah. So FDR did not sit down on
Oh,
the radio.
we got another all cap tweet this week. It was I need allies.
I can't wait
Just
until his next tweet
out of
is.
context. He needs allies in the I don't know, but he needs lawyers for one thing, but they keep like refusing him. But
I really hope that like his next tweet is like, I fell down. I fell in the bathroom. Help! Is he tweeting from the bath? Did he fall off the toilet again? So Obama's, I think his greatest failure was that, as much as I don't like some of the stuff he did, he saved us from a second Great Depression, so he didn't sell it. His other great sin, and this is the part that's just like, I can't believe that this is a problem in today's America. You know what his other like biggest sin was?
this is where like if we were doing a video, I'd be like, I don't know, Peter, and I'm like waving my hand in front of my face.
His other big sin was that he is black. He is a
Yeah.
successful black president with no scandal. Like I hate to say this. He's incredibly articulate. He was very popular and like charismatic. You know what I mean? Like he's everything that I feel like the sort of like last
He
dying.
uses them
Yeah.
fancy words
Yeah,
just to try and talk down to me and my kin.
Exactly that whole idea. He like the idea that like this man who is black is I believe he's a constitutional scholar, like he's president, like it's like how dare he be charismatic and like pop, like people hated that because for so long they were sold that racist ideology of like, hey, you know what, you may have it real bad, the cows may be dying, your wife hates you, but you know what, at least you're white. So those people that were sold on that and then like passed that down to their kids and all that stuff, now they're looking at the TV and they can't even feel good about being white because we had an incredibly amazing black president, and that like the only response to that to them was, my team needs a win, I have to burn everything he did, I don't care if it destroys my country.
And technically, we started building up an incredible State Department back under Bush, but it was under Obama last, so anything he did, Trump just has to undo. Like, that's been the majority of
That's where
what he's done, is sign executive orders to undo everything Obama did.
Yeah.
And so it's infuriating if you're pro-humanity and kindness and compassion. But, if you're a fan of, hey, look at them, they're angry, then this has been a fantastic time for you.
And when people say that, I just, they get me in a place where I want to sit them down to my own fireside chat and be like, well,
stick their faces in the fire.
I don't. I'm not like, I don't want to stick their face in the fire. I want to make them listen to my own radio chat where I'm like, well, you're goddamn right, I'm angry. You bunch of fools with your shenanigans have ruined a good country. You're goddamn right, I'm angry and I'm triggered because you're an idiot and your whole my team won mentality is ruining the country and is ruining people's lives. I just want you to be happy.
For instance, Puerto Rico and all the people that are still without power.
Oh my God!
Homes
oh my God! We are so beyond the pale right now that New York is New York. I call it New York because Puerto Rico and New York are basically I don't want to say the same place, but they're the same people, right? I think I read once that there are more Puerto Ricans in New York than Puerto Rico. Then I'm like, why aren't they called New Yorkers then in Puerto Rico? Huh. Anyway, but New York is a sizable Puerto Rican population. But yeah, so Puerto Rico, and we're just still not really putting any aid in. They're a goddamn they're everything. They're almost a U.S. state, and it would be like if Texas had flooded, and then we were like, meh, and just walked away from Texas. They don't have power. They don't have hospitals. The island is destroyed, and nothing is happening.
Funny enough, during the exact same time period that Puerto Rico was ravaged, so was Texas, and our response was a hell of a lot better, and we fixed it all up.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what could have been the difference there. Once again, I'm waving my hand in front of my face. You can't see it, but something was different about the Texans that made America want to go ahead and fix their homes right up.
Well, a big part of Texas was we once fought a war in Texas to replace all the brown people with white people. If you remember that whole the Mexican-American War. So
I remember the Bowie knife.
So that happened. Yeah, old Jim Bowie's like, I invented a knife. And then the Mexicans were like, cool, we're going to stab you to death with it at the Alamo. And he's like, I don't like that. No, nope, too late. Yeah, that's the biggest thing is just can you imagine how different things would be if Obama had been white? Because that's the biggest thing that they don't say, but that they just hate about him. They're like, he's so smarmy. I'm like, you don't like it that in your mind somebody who is black forgot their station and was uppity, and you can't see I'm making air quotes right now, because remember a lot of these old voters and these old people in the government were the same people that were segregation now, segregation forever. They're still around, they're still in the government.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. So last time, because a lot of our podcast was lost, this was something that was in the first recording that I forgot to do whenever we went back to do the second recording, and I just wanted to throw it in near the end right here, if that's okay.
Yeah. Because we're coming up on the end of our podcast, so yeah, carry it away.
Yeah. Okay. So this goes back to Cambridge Analytica's. The whole thing about them and all the ways in which they're able to manipulate people using carefully constructed data from their personalities, looking at their likes or dislikes. And one thing that I found the most interesting was that they are actually the ones that are responsible for a lot of Donald Trump's buzzwords, right? Remember the one of the big things about him was that he gives people nicknames: Lion Ted Cruz, Crooked Hillary. What are some of the other ones?
You see, you had little Marco Rubio.
Low Energy Jeb.
Yeah. I talked about before, what made me mad about those names is they're not even good names. They're not even alliterations. As a person who is a comic that really likes insulting people, I'm like, you couldn't come up with a better name than that, and that stuck? That's what worked?
Right. But there's one person, a Trump supporter, that he'll deny being a Trump supporter, but he clearly is. It was one time when Trump was appeared to be losing. He got really mad and had like a super emotional post about it, saying, "Well, I guess Hillary's gonna win then, so y'all have fun with that." And that's
Yeah, we
Scott Adams. Now, I like reading his blogs because he was the first, actually, he's still the only person that I know of that created intelligent sounding reasons for Trump to possibly be a good president. He was able to make a compelling argument for Trump maybe not being that bad. And so that's why I kept coming back to his posts and reading them because I like I like the arguments. And one thing that he had said about the nicknames was that it proved that Trump was a master persuader because he was able to take aspects of a person and paint a very vivid image in your mind of something negative so that he could destroy his opponents with these, what do you call it? Buzzword kill shots,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
to speak.
Like he was
So,
like he was a whole advertising industry inside one man.
right. So, low energy Jeb. Let's take that one for instance. That seems like a lazy nickname.
That's incredibly
It's not
lazy.
an alliterate. It's not a an alliteration. It's nothing. But what is one of Jeb's strongest attributes? Like, what's one of the best things about him? Is that he's a very calm person. He's a very collected person. He comes off as a very reasonable person at all times. So in a time of crisis, let's say we found out that China's going to start sending war boats over to the U.S., who would you who would you feel safe putting at the helm of deciding what is the best action to take to defend ourselves from an impending attack? Jeb Bush. He's the person who would have the calm head for such a thing.
Right.
And what do you do with the nickname Low Energy Jeb?
You take his greatest strength and you turn it into a negative.
Right, you destroy all of that by pointing out, oh, he's so just tired and he doesn't have the energy to do anything. Because what you're actually looking at whenever you look at him is a calm collectiveness, but what you're making people see is just sort of sluggish. He's not really there. He's not really paying attention. Suddenly you don't trust him at all to command the armies because you're like, oh, he's not even going to be paying attention to the generals. He's going to be looking for his next nap.
Real quick, what do you think Trump's nickname for FDR would have been, seeing that his legs were damaged by polio?
Ooh, well, we know what type of nicknames he comes up with lately.
Yeah.
It's just so let's see.
Would it have been like old lazy Roosevelt?
I was gonna say ravaged Roosevelt, but that's an alliteration.
Yeah, that's too good. No, old sitting Roosevelt. Always sitting. Always.
I like sitting Roosevelt.
Always sitting down. You know.
Old Willie Chair Roosevelt.
You know, he had polio come out of his eyes and his mouth and his wherever.
Let's see. Another really good one was Crooked Hillary, because crooked is a double entendre. Not only is she, a criminal, crooked, but also it invokes the image of an old crone, because he's saying, look at that old buzzard. And so you can clearly see like a hunched over evil wicked witch lady.
Yeah, like she's just like the fates from Greek mythology, where she's like,
yes, I'll look at the threads and cut the one when your life is over.
Right. So the one thing. Oh, by the way, if you ever hear someone argue that Trump's just playing five-dimensional chess or whatever, that's also a Scott Adams argument, right? Like, he's so smart that he's able to pretend like he's losing in order to ultimately win. That's one of his arguments, and it's all based on, like, the linchpin is these persuasion tactics he's able to use.
That he's like a political chess master.
Right. But turns out it was actually the entire time, every single good nickname he's ever come up with, it's all been Cambridge Analytica the entire time.
All Cambridge shitbird Analytica that stole 50 million people's Facebook user data, crunched the numbers, and used
50 million.
50 million. So it was basically a data company that stole our information and used it to hand this dude like these dumb names.
Yep. And I mean, even he admits this himself that all these things came from Cambridge Analytics. During one of his campaign rallies, he's saying that they gave him this little catchphrase that he said that he didn't like himself. He's like, "Oh, that seems so hokey. I'm not going to use it." But I used it in a speech at Florida, and the crowd went wild. It was "Drain the Swamp."
And that's what makes.
So there we have like one of the big things. Besides "Make America Great Again," it was "Drain the Swamp."
That's what
Oh,
makes.
by the way, "Make America Great Again" was stolen from what's his face, Reagan.
That's what makes me so mad is like we used to have politicians that would say things like, "The only thing that we have to fear is fear itself." We went from that to like, lying Ted Cruz, and I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ.
I grab him by the pussy. I don't even wait.
Yeah, I've got the best pussy grabbers.
To make, and everyone was saying, "Oh, they're upset at his language because, and these are the same people that read 50 Shades of Grey."
Yeah, people like to make weird comparisons. I'm like, that's a fictional book. What does that have to do with Trump being a real human being that's sexually assaulting people?
Yeah, that's, man.
Yeah.
So that's about all I got to say about that.
Yep. Mama said this was my special vote, and if I voted for Trump, he could take me anywhere.
I love that one. All right, so we said that we would give people a shout out if they gave us.
I forgot.
Review on iTunes.
Do you have the list? I forgot the list.
I have the list.
All right. Give us the first name of the person that went on and gave us a rating on iTunes.
The name of the very first person that's given us a rating on iTunes is Powell Not Found.
Powell Not Found. I actually know who this is, but I won't reveal his identity to the world. Powell Not Found. Ode to you, sir. You are a beautiful human being with a lush mane of hair and a dazzling smile. We should all be so lucky as to bask in the glory of your bright, beautiful eyes.
Thank you very much for your contribution to the cause.
Who's our next person that gets a nice little compliment here at the end of this?
That's all so far.
Well, I will say we got there was at least one more on Stitcher.
I gotta go check that too then. Okay, I'll have a more comprehensive list
So
next
I
week.
have
I'll check with iTunes.
I have the one from Stitcher. I will not reveal her last name because I'm still bad at pronouncing it, even though I've known her for years. But we will say, Alyssa, you went on to Stitcher and gave us a nice comment and a super nice rating. To you, ma'am, we say that may we all live to be as kind and wonderful, as charming as you are, and may you continue to inspire future generations with your example of wonderfulness.
You're a scholar and a gentlewoman, ma'am.
Or a
We salute you.
or a gentleman. We, you know what? It's whatever you want. A gentle person, if you like. It's up to you. We assign no gender roles here at those Muckrakers.
We assign a few.
Okay, so all right. I can't.
It's a lottery system.
I can't. Yeah, all right. It's a lottery system, right? That way, it's totally fair. Listen, we don't assign the genders; they just pop up, and then we just throw it out there. So follow us, guys. Follow us on iTunes, on Stitcher, we're on Google Play, anywhere iTunes podcast can be found. We're also on SoundCloud. So we do this thing where, as you just heard, if you go on, give us a nice little rating, a little comment, because it really helps us out to get more listeners. We take your name and we say great things about you. Are you gonna?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I was like, are you gonna add into that, or are you just gonna leave me hanging?
I'll just leave you hanging.
All right. Well, that's it for this week's episode. Do you have anything else that you want to plug?
Not really. We didn't cover the Russian diplomats. Screw it. We'll cover that some other time.
We can never cover everything because there's simply not enough time in today's fast-paced news world to cover all the news. But we cover everything we can.
We're doing the best we can here in the time allotted.
Guys, we're just two dudes in a closet. Like, there's only so much we can do.
One of us is in a closet, and Peter's physically in one, so...
Peter's in the closet, and then he pulled out his gun.
So we better run. All right, thank you so much for tuning in to Muckrakers, and remember, if you're not fully dressed... I'm not doing that one. Robertson used to do it. God, I hated that so much.
Robertson was the old principal, right?
Vice principal.
Well, I guess we'll end it on this. Obama was my best good friend.
Obama could take me anywhere.
I don't know. I wanted to do something with was Forrest Gump. But I guess the best thing to leave it on, if we're going to leave it on with a Gumpism, is, well, that's all I have to say about that.